Good evening, everyone. I have 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order and ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Greg David,
Present.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Here.
Miss Emily Hamburg,
Here.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Here.
and Mr. John Welch.
Present.
And you have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. This evening, we have Dr. Rob Lindstedt, from Superintendent of Sunrise Christian Academy, to lead us in prayer. Dr. Lindstedt.
Good evening. They say that prayer can be composed of several things. One, you can ask God for something. You can thank God for something. You can come to God on behalf of others. And you can even come to God on behalf of yourself. And some prayers have all four of those things, and tonight's prayer will have all four of those. Father God, we come to you, and we thank you, first of all, for the vision of our founding fathers 246 years ago to envision a country like we have. Father, we thank you for those who have paid a dear price to keep this country great and free. And Father, we also ask that you would give wisdom to our civil servants, that you would protect our policemen, our firefighters, our families. Father, we thank you for living in a country that, although it may need improvement, we have the freedom to work toward that improvement. We thank you, Father, for the peace, the protection that our community had even over this past holiday. And Father, we thank you most of all for the freedom that we have spiritually, because Jesus Christ loved us, was willing to go to the cross, die for our sins, shed his blood, and come alive again. We thank you for this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is determine agenda additions. Are there any agenda additions to consider? Hearing none, I'll move on to consent agenda. So this contains several items. If you'd like anything removed from the consent agenda, please request that I can add it to the regular agenda. Included in are the minutes of the June 21st City Council meeting, revised petition for sanitary sewer and water distribution improvements to serve Chapel Landing 5th Edition Phase 1, and the corresponding amending resolutions. Our bond counsel, Kevin Cowan from Gilmore Bell, is here to answer any questions. I think there he is. Yes. Thank you. Okay. I don't hear any questions, so if none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and second by Ms. Hamburg. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 7 is discussion and approval of appropriations ordinance 2212. This reporting period includes one payroll period. The first bonded development expenses for Cedar Pass Phase 1 is also included in the bonded capital project expenses totaling $100,458. There a motion to approve the appropriations ordinance?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance 22-12.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 7 is the request of the city appearances. So I invited Senate President Masterson to the podium. I've asked Senator to update us on legislative related to Bel Air priorities, the Spark grants, as well as other important legislation that affects our constituents. So thank you, Senator Masterson, for coming. and visiting with us this evening.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim. Appreciate it. Hope everybody had a great 4th. I certainly did. I'm still dressed for that occasion, not this one. So this had to be deja vu for this time I sat on the Andover City Council back in the early 2000s. So life's changed since then. But thank you for what you do. You know, there's elected official is, especially at these levels where your compensation is rarely much more than thank you. So appreciate what you guys do. And what's unique now is my district now comes this side of Woodlawn. As we had redistricting at the state level, my Senate district prior to that was only the east of Woodlawn, but now it's almost in the entirety of Bel Air. If not, I need to actually go back and look at the lines. There may be some pieces that are out, but I think almost the entirety of Bel Air, which was one of the requests the city made, right?
I didn't catch that in the maps, but
Yeah,
let's take a
one-stop
look at
shopping
those.
on my side of the fence. All right. I think you still have 2 House members. So that's split out. You did ask me to cover a few specific things. So I thought I'd just kind of speak extemporaneously on those and then have you guys ask me questions because I much prefer conversations than speeches. So the first one was just a little bit of an update on your priorities and some of the things that happened in the legislature this year. Of course, years like this are always they're always marked with things like being an election year for the House and for the governor's office and things, and that always for reasons everybody knows changes the way people think about certain issues. Fortunately, it's not an election year for the Senate. That'll happen in 2024 when everybody's up. So that, and we're also marked by, the remnants of COVID, all the stimulus dollars that came through our Spark and our base programming. So all those things were kind of unique to this year. We had actually, seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't. Fall of 21, right? Coming into this was the first ever special session of the legislature that was called by the legislature itself. Never happened before in the history of Kansas. The governor called special sessions, but the legislature had never called itself in. And that was all around what was happening at the time with the mandates for the COVID shot and all that. So there were lots of unrest, people losing their jobs and things like that. So we had to we dealt with that on just the first thing we dealt with. We dealt with that on a religious liberty standpoint, that if you felt to be exempt for your religious liberty, then it's not to be questioned. That's how we handled that. And truth is, that whole, not to get off subject, but COVID became political from day one. The tragedy was it happens during an election year, so it becomes politics on both sides of the aisle, and they've really kind of destroyed the conversation. So it makes things much more difficult in the arena of politics, right? And probably one of the worst things they did was destroy the term vaccine, right? Because you had the polio vaccine, but you take a flu shot. And there's nothing wrong with the flu shot. Flu shot was a cocktail of variants that was make it easier on you to tackle the flu. But we decided to call COVID a vaccine, and now it's all a wash. So the politics got ugly on that, and for reasons we can all imagine. So anyway, tackled that. That all went very well. Saved a lot of jobs. Into session, you coming more into some of that. Have to make a list. We did so much. Obviously, this was a redistricting year, which is another 10-year unique cycle. Which there's nothing more political, than districting. I mean, you guys will even deal with that yourselves. But when you get into state level politics and even more so federal level politics, the truth is, if you're in a red state, the blue said you cheat. And if you're in a blue state, the red said you cheat. I mean, that's just the way that is. I mean, and so you expect it. Truth was in Kansas, what we did, even on the congressional map, which was the one that the court just recently upheld. I think there was a group that felt like the court would knock that map down, but the truth was the map was very fair, and it was focused on it could have been a lot less fair, that's for sure. And that really that whole map was on, is Johnson County, for example, the core of the 3rd district? That's what that conversation was all about, because Johnson, for the entirety of Kansas's history, has been the core of the 3rd district. Wyandotte, Franklin, Miami, Douglas, they've all been in by portions, out by portions, and in and out in some degree. And the truth was the population was so large, can't have Wyandotte and Johnson together. So the answer was Johnson's the core. How do you split Wyandotte? So that everything else was a result of that. And the court saw that. So that was good news. We did have bipartisan support for the Senate's drawn map and the House drawn map and a signature, right? Divided government's difficult. but you need to learn. We need to learn to get along, and that's hard to do in kind of our contemporary culture. So we're losing the art of having conversations about very difficult subjects that you disagree on in a civil way that can be productive. But we got there with that. So we did the maps. We did open enrollment and education. We did, of course, the food sales tax is coming down. We did raise some exemptions for your property as it pertains to the school tax. So that's going to save everybody a little bit of property tax. The exemption went from first 20 to the first 40,000. Did some welfare reform, did quite a bit on election integrity because that was a very hot topic at the state and national level. Ours were around, just securing the ballots. So as far as watermarking the ballots, making sure the voter is the voter. There was lots of turmoil around drop boxes, which is understandable, right? You want to make it easy to vote, hard to cheat. And so there's a lot of nuances. The only thing that we attempted that we didn't accomplish because of the veto was that made election day, that at 7 p.m. on election night, you just stop counting votes because you're in, right? And so that was one thing that'll probably return next year. We did do some tweaking on our emergency management statutes because those were really designed. COVID exposed a lot. Those statutes were designed for floods, fires, tornadoes, where you might have a massive event like right out there in Andover, right, 91, or Greensburg, tornado wipes the whole place out. You actually have cause for martial law at some level in that environment because you need to keep people out. I was actually just in this recent Andover tornado. We were one of the lucky ones. We got damaged but didn't lose the house, but we had looters in the neighborhood that night. It shocks me that we have people like that in society. But so you have a reason for that. But what it didn't contemplate was what COVID brought. Locking down churches and locking down business and calling you essential and you non-essential, and that kind of a disaster really wreaked a lot of havoc. And so we've reworked a lot of the KEMA statutes. I think there's more to go. We had a sanctuary city bill because up in Wyandotte, we had a city decide to issue its own IDs. And we just made it clear that if you don't know that you're a valid voter, then you can't vote in a state election. Even with that bill, they're allowed to vote in any city. The city's doing what it wants to do, but you're not a valid voter in state elections. And believe it or not, our current governor even signed that. So election year conversions are a great thing. We also did constitutional amendments. So everybody knows there's value in them both. So on the amendment, it's deals with the abortion, and that's a big issue we have. We had, for those that I think most people know, but those that didn't, in 2019, just 2.5 years ago, our current Supreme Court did what was similar to Roe v. Wade in 73, except to a much further extent. They invented a right to abortion up into partial birth, and so everything in our current statutes is presumptively now unconstitutional, whether that's parental notification, cleanliness regulations, and they are being challenged. So personally, I'm a big supporter of that amendment, and all that amendment does is say the legislature, via the people through the legislature, can regulate in some manner. That's all that does. So lots of misinformation out in the general public. I've seen commercials that are just flat out lies, quite frankly, on what that amendment does. That's important. We do have an amendment on regulations on elected sheriffs. I think that's the extent of that. We attempted a taxpayer protection amendment, lost that by 1 vote, and attempted a judicial selection amendment, and lost that by 1 vote. They'll take super majorities because they're constitutional amendments, and I say lost it by a vote. When I say constitutional amendment, we take super majorities of the legislature to put it on the ballot for the people to say yes or no. So that's what those are. So those were the things we accomplished. Let me touch on some of your things. Oh, you were talking about the split on the countywide sales tax was one of the requests, and that did not change. There was one of the tax bills contained a unique piece for Atchison. There was a conflict up in Atchison between the county and the city. And we kept that narrowly tailored for that area. That they had a real conflict on the divisions of theirs. But other than that, no change. So that's the plus for you guys. Property tax. You mentioned property tax. We had property tax transparency. We did the notification. And I know that some of the locals. I've been having sat at a city council. I understand some of the hassles of that. But frankly, a law like that creates transparency is more for these people, right? I mean, this is who needs to have transparency in what they pay in taxes and when they go up and when they don't, and those out there. And we all know that you have to be proactive with that transparency because people get busy in life, right? And we see that in our elections, right? And turnout. I don't know what the turnout was in 21's local, but I mean, I'm sure it was mid to low, teens in percentage. So you win your seats with a couple hundred votes, right? I mean, a few hundred votes, maybe up to 1,000. I don't know. So let's think about that. But you need to be accountable to every resident, whether they took advantage of their liberty or not. So home rule, we didn't do any changes to home rule, but I understand that as well. You want to, and having sat there were times I have to admit I was irritated, right, with what I thought maybe the state didn't do, but the state's the entity. I mean, you as a city derive your power from that. Quite frankly, the federal government derives its power from the states, but we get that confused a lot too. 254, I actually support that project. The 254 infrastructure piece, you ask about that. So we'll work to get that, I think, into Ike. You'll see a change probably. Who knows what happens now after this election. If you see changes in administration, you'll see a different secretary, different priorities, and those types of things. But we'll manage our way through that. Obviously, the North Junction in Wichita was the primary project that was needed to be handled by Ike because there was such congestion up there. Really, East Kellogg's coming to a bit of a close. It's going to come out through Andover. So I could see 254 picking up in priority there. Mental health, we're actually, and then this will jump a little ahead to your second question, was on some of the ARPA and base funding, some of the stimulus dollars. Budget appropriated $15 million to start the new mental hospital in Sedgwick County, and we're looking to push another $25 million. It's a $40 million project to put a new mental hospital in Sedgwick County, because we're having transportation issues. We're getting out to Larned or Osawatomie with some of those needs, and so it's a needed facility. Elections, I touched on what we did with elections, and you asked a question about putting a local question on the ballot, and I think it's a conversation to be had. I don't know that it was had. That was not an issue that percolated to the top in the conversations this year, but we'll take a look at that. Redistricting we went over, and that was your priorities list. And your other one was the Bel Air's base grant, and I had to go back and look, and I didn't see. So I don't know what the project originally was, but the Department of Commerce did not forward that into the top of its list. BASE was a unique. So BASE, these are in acronyms. So BASE basically is a $100 million that came out of the stimulus package that was ARPA, got put into what was called BASE. BASE was a Department of Commerce program for infrastructure. And so what happened, and we did have some influence on that after the money went into the program, but what the Commerce scored everything. Commerce's department went through their process and scored everything. And then we received, me being president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, who's from Johnson County, we had received their cut down list that we would then set with the department and talk about what priorities were in our chambers before those votes happened. And I don't think Bel Air was on there. And there was one question about why did Wichita only get $5 million? And it's because they only asked for $3.5 million. And I'm from this area, so I looked through here and I've got Johnson County asking for everything, and Sedgwick County and Wichita asked for $3.5 million. I went back to the city administrator and I said, "What is this project?" They said, "Well, we really need $5.5 million, but we didn't know what to ask for." I said, "Well, I'm going to push as hard as I can because right now all this money flow is going to the Northeast." So I pushed back, and we were able to secure 5 of that for Wichita, and then Andover got a good turnout, and so did Butler County. So our area, roughly 30 million down here, but Johnson County, without question, got more. The Speaker is from there and was very aggressive with things. So they have a lot of projects going on up there as well, but that's not my home place. So I fight for this area down here. So that was that. So the only reason I say it was denied is Commerce didn't advance it in their point system for whatever reason. So if anything like that happens again, I would actually appreciate you guys contacting me directly with a lot of specifics, because then I can be the advocate as we move forward in that process. And being from here and having the position that I'm in now, and we can have a real voice in that process. So I think that's it. Any questions that you guys might have or concerns or?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions myself, and of course, council's
All right.
members should
What
ask
you got,
theirs
Jim?
as well. But the revenue neutral rate issue, Senate Bill 13 of a couple of years ago, that is an unfunded mandate for the cities. Now, we don't have to pay anything yet, but next year we'll have to start paying for all those letters. I get the transparency. The transparency is perfect. It needs to happen. But I think the method that was put in place in the legislature is very cumbersome and very inexpensive to do. And I think there are simpler ways to do that. And I'd like to have a discussion about that sometime and see if we can't make some fixes on that bill.
Yeah, I think there are actually already conversations around, although here's what I'm going to say. The cost of sending letters out on the scale against the people knowing exactly what's going on is worthwhile. And I say, I know you call it unfunded mandate, but it's really something that should have been happening anyway, right? I mean, it's part of the cost of their government is you explaining to them what you're doing. So, but on that note, we are trying to find a way to trim that into like a single location anyway, to make it even simpler for the constituent, right? To go down to, we're hoping we can get it even clear down to where when the county sends their, notice out where everything's listed, this is the school district, and that we could even have that part of that one-stop shop, which would save a lot moving forward. But even absent of that, I still believe it's the right thing to do to get that information out, because in the end, it's about the individual.
Sure. Oh, yeah, I'm all in favor of the transparency aspect of it. I think
Yeah.
that's good.
No, I understand where you're coming from on that though, Jim, because it does have
So-
cost of mailing.
The ballot question issue and the way that came up is this council wanted to put a couple of things on the ballot that related to term limits for the council members and the mayor and the mayor's term, because we wanted the people to make that decision. Well, when we went to do it, we found out that there was an attorney general opinion from way back when Vern Miller was attorney general, if you remember Vern Miller. He had made an opinion that you could not mix non-mandatory issues with mandatory issues on the same ballot. And the way I understand this, state statutes lists what are mandatory issues. And of course, these type of issues were not considered mandatory under statute. So they were non-mandatory and could not be put on the ballot. Now, we work around it. We've already passed those ordinances, charter ordinances, and if there's a protest petition, I'm fine with that because that'll put it on the ballot, which is what we wanted in the first place. But it's kind of like, why did we have to go through all that when we wanted to know what the people of Bel Air thought about those issues, other than just force it. So I don't know if there's any discussion going on about changing any of that, because that's kind of, I can't remember how long ago Vern Miller was attorney general, but it's probably been at
been a
least 30
minute,
years,
yeah.
maybe 40. Okay.
So I mean, candidly, no, I'm not aware of any discussion that was on around that, but it's not that it shouldn't be had. I mean, I don't know. I was aware that was the case, that there'd been conversations in the past about whether it's required or not. I think if I remember right, some of the conversations way back then are related to that were just kind of the busyness of the ballot, similar to and I'm not saying that's a good reason. I think you actually should be able to put those questions on. And so I need to see if we can go there, but it's similar to some of the resistance you had with putting like all the elections on the same year, right? We do locals odd and statewide and stuff on even. And there was a push at one point to put it all together. And that was some of the same logic used then to say, well, it's too much. It's too much on the same ballot.
Yeah.
So, but I'm actually in favor of that too. So, but for what that's worth. So we will have a conversation about that.
Those are my
Jim.
questions, but anyone from the council have questions for Senator Masterson?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I actually have one.
Mr. Dean?
So one thing on K254, just my knowledge with working with that and being a citizen of Bel Air for 10 years and knowing the importance that the city and its citizens have on safety of your constituents and our families. One thing I'd strongly encourage is North Junction gets a lot of love, and rightfully so, because it's a major interchange. There's also being studies done on the Turnpike interchange at El Dorado. What I'd encourage you to do is understand that sometimes the big dollar projects and the ones that get all the attention might get lost. Some of the projects that connect the two might get lost. And that's the stretch of road. K254 goes right through our community. And so as you advocate, I just encourage you to try to champion the entire 254 corridor when discussions are had about North Junction, because there's another phase of that coming, and any future stuff that's coming. Championing that whole corridor as a big impact to this local community, but also the region. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents there.
Well,
Thank you.
And I will continue that. And you're right. Things get lost in the wash, and it's almost in that middle ground, right? It's not the small safety project that you can do with a safety program, and it's not the mega project like North Junction. So they do get lost in priority. Although I have personal interest. I mean, those are my stomping grounds, right? I grew up just out north of Augusta, and I went to Oil Hill School, which is right there just next to the Turnpike Exchange, and 254 was a big corridor for us. And it does have some safety issues out there that need to be addressed. And it's also the connection for really Wichita to like El Dorado Lake and to the Turnpike, a lot of that northeast travel. So it's a very key road, right? And so that's not lost on me as we move forward, and it's and the danger's not lost on me. I was following my mother-in-law back from a deal. We were north of there, and she came back, and for I don't know, we had to take her car. We had to recommend she not drive. She came over that first lane like it wasn't even anything and stopped in the middle. I mean, just blew through that first, and I'm sitting there watching this thing. If you had the right tractor trailer coming, she wouldn't be around anymore. So, yeah, we had to have a big conversation about that. So I'm fully aware, and I appreciate those comments. You got anything else for me?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question on the grants. And so the base grants, you talked about how the Commerce Department made some recommendations there. I know those are what they are, but it seems like there's more and more of these grant programs that are coming. We're hearing about lots of grant opportunities in the future. And those programs are what they are, but if they're there, I want to make sure we're positioned to take care of them or to participate in them as much as possible. Is there a way to get?
Sorry, go ahead.
Is there a way to get visibility to how the Commerce Department is going to think about the applications so that we can determine what are good projects to submit, less good projects to submit, get some sort of insight into how they're going to approach the scoring that they're going to do as they prep those for the legislature?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That was part of the issue, right? The timeline on that was so short. Very few people knew how to get in and be part of it, right? And so it happened quickly. We were not even aware of what they were using as their key metrics, right, inside the department. That has a lot to do with your commerce secretary or what they're putting inside and who's running the administration, which at this point could change, right? So I want to say, yeah, we can do that, but we might have, a wholesale change within the next 12 months, right, in that department. I would like, actually, if you could send me details about the project you requested and others, I can be vigilant in seeing what may or may not be out there, because it's going to be a short time frame. What we have, it's kind of like the pig and the python, right? I mean, we have so much cash that has moved out with all this trillions in printing. So it's no shock that it's moved through Kansas's budget and into our coffers at this point, but it will digest. I mean, that all fades away, and you won't see all these programs. I've never seen it like this in my time up there. And I went through 08, which was similar. And I keep telling my colleagues, so even the turnover has been so big in the House, the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House wasn't even in the legislature in 08 when the crash happened. There's only a handful of us that were when all that happened. And so it feels to me we are standing on the same cliff about 5 ledges up, because if you remember 08, and by the way, we were talking earlier, I was building houses here in Central Park in 08 when all of a sudden housing pops, everything's worth half what you paid to build it, and times are hard, right? And $1 billion evaporates, $1.5 billion in the end evaporates from the state budget. And that spring, spring of '08, before that happened, we were sitting there in appropriation committees with revenue projections that said we were going to have money coming out our ears for the indefinite future, right? And the legislature passed this massive spending budget. It increased 10% in 1 year. I remember it. I mean, it was a 10% increase in the budget. Massive spending on K-12 education, massive spending on you name it. I mean, it was just, roads and you pick it. Well, everybody knows what happened in the fall. Boom, everything pops. You lose $1.5 billion. The truth is, the only governor that ever cut schools was Mark Parkinson. He was a governor at the time, and I was proud of him because all the money just faded away. So then you got Brownback comes in, and he can't ever get it back up to that watermark. So every year's a cut from what the high watermark was, right? So it wasn't less year than but same thing is, but that's where everybody, and that changes the public debate on things. And then you had the stimulus, right? Instead of, and we remember people were freaking out then because it's almost $1 trillion stimulus plan, right? 900 and some billion. Well, now it's trillions. And so all that's flooding through happened then for a bit too, but the economy was in a different spot than when this thing hits. So we have all this cash sitting in the system. So we were very, I made sure we paid off debt. You did one-time spending because you build that into your budget. There will be a cliff because you can't stop it all. There will be a cliff, but those programs, I'm sorry, I've got ADD for those that don't know. So those programs will disappear at some point. So it is time sensitive. So I would say in the near future, you need to produce something. The legislature's out right now. We come back in January, but I would even tell you it's as important as you need to figure it out next session, spring of 23. So anything you have in mind that might fit a grant program, that might have some resources, probably needs to be sooner rather than later. It's a good question. All right, anything else?
I'd like to ask you about the revenue neutral rate thing again. We are in a weird predicament here because our city is growing. As more houses are added, our budget gets higher even without changing the mill levy. And so while we're not affecting our existing citizens, we are forced to go through all the steps for the increased budget, even, when it's not, has no effect on the existing citizens. And even last year we had a 3 mill levy decrease, and we still had to go through all this hoops for the revenue neutral rate because we got more revenue because we had 100 more houses.
Well, John, I want to celebrate and tell everybody I dropped their taxes by 3 mils. That's a good thing to communicate.
It's a great thing, but we're still having to go through all the hoops, and we would have to mail out all the information. And that's something we'd have to spend money on that we could spend money on something else. I don't know what it's going to cost. We got 5,000 houses. So that's
that's an interesting idea. You would be contemplating that if the mill goes down, you don't have to do any of it. It's only if it goes up, because that's the only thing they're really going to care about. That's interesting. No, and we are contemplating making changes. Maybe that's something that should be in the conversation. Yeah.
Right. That's why it's an issue to us. If we were raising taxes on everybody, yes, I agree. We should be clear about it. And
difficulty is, and it's often
chance to
not the
object.
cities, right? You have the school districts, and Kansas has so many. We're in the top of the country of the number of different taxing jurisdictions, right? So you'll take heat for things that others did, right? We even have, like Butler, for example, has the community college, right? The community college has 22 mills sitting on it. I can't imagine these, like Montgomery County or Pratt, that has 45 mills sitting on their community college on top of the city and the county. I don't know how you run a business down there, but point is getting it to them. I'll carry that forward. We'll have that conversation about, because there is some, if your taxes are going down, although I have to admit, John, I'd want to send the mailer out and tell them all about it.
Well, but they don't see that, like you just said, because, my last year's tax statement, I looked at it, I ended up paying more taxes. Bel Air taxes went down, everybody else's went up.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else stayed even. They all raised their mill levies.
Which is crazy.
But yet they were not required to do anything to let people know that they were the ones that were causing the extra expense.
Yeah, I can't explain it, but it's, there was $1 billion that went in, an extra $1 billion that went into the K-12 system, and we still had a bunch of districts raise the mills, and that was outside, and that was on top of the state full funding the formula underneath it and a billion, and it's still, so I don't know how to explain it. So, all right, I'm gonna take up too much time here, guys.
Well, appreciate your time. And
You
Are
bet.
there any other questions for Senator Masterson?
If you need anything, reach out.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you very
guys.
much for coming and spending time with us. Next on the agenda, we have Garver invited representative to the podium to share progress of Woodlawn reconstruction as well as any traffic patterns. So I think Mr. Dakota Zimmerman is here. Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, city council members, city staff. Before I get started, I see got a few new faces here, so give you a quick little update. Woodlawn construction from 37th to 45th. I'm sure you can't miss it. It's been a nice, fun project right in the heart of the town here. I'm Dakota Zimmerman. I act as the resident engineer on the job. Eric Strecker's here in the back as well. He's the full-time inspector on site every day, making sure everything's put into the highest quality and matching the plans and specifications. So I usually come in and give a quick update on here. This one, it's usually the same stuff of going through this, but we're about to start a new phase transition. So I want to spend more time on that so the public knows and everyone's fully aware of this. Make sure this is on real quick. There we go. All right, as always, start off the safety statement. I want to say that this job has had 0 reported injuries on it, which is really, really fantastic. This is a highly congested area. There's a lot going on, traffic going through there. There's grade separations and all that going on, and we've had 0 injuries. So it's a kudos to the staff on site, what they're doing and keeping everyone safe, not only them, but also the traveling public as well. Another point I want to bring up is we do have that emergency vehicles only drive from Quail Ridge up to that frontage road on the west side of Woodlawn by the pond there. Just want to remind everyone that that is just for emergency vehicles. We even had a progress meeting today with the contractor and ourselves. And I told those guys, hey, let's stay off of that because anytime we're on that as non-emergency vehicles, that promotes other people to use it. So we want to keep that completely clear and allow it to be the use that's intended for the fire department and the police. I know the chief has done a great job of monitoring this. I think he's wrote a few individuals up, but there people are seeing it and they're stopping and turning around, which is great. And as always, the city does a great job, Ms. Terhune handling the updates on here. You can go to the city's website there, but we also have our contact information, our email address and phone number that you can always reach out to us with your questions, concerns, comments, and we'll address those as soon as we can. So just a reminder that that's there for everyone. As far as working days, we have charged 108 working days. The month of June was a very wet month of June, a ton of rain. But as you remember, we don't charge working days through those times when the contractor's not working. So we're at 108 of the 333 working days plus the 40 cleanup days. We're sitting around 29% complete. Current activities is, for the most part, similar to last time I was here. It's the east half of Woodlawn from 37th to 45th, heavy focus north of the railroad tracks. You might not see like it's progressing a whole bunch, but we have put a ton of storm sewer in, a bunch of storm sewer. And that's very important. I mean, you're all aware of the drainage this area receives and what collects that. So they've made great progress on that. We have storm sewer, a good part of it installed south of the tracks. But basically from Rodeo, pretty much up to 45th and a little bit east on the south part of 45th, that storm sewer, that main line is put in now. So that's been a heavy progress. There's been some work on the sanitary sewer and water line as expected. And then the main line, Woodlawn itself, we have in some areas, we have the Tensar rock down, the AB3 down, the subgrades prepped. And I am proud to announce that Perryton and Rodeo are officially open. So I know that it was a big ticket item and that is open to be used. So a few photos. This one's of the drainage structure on the east side. There at Quail Ridge. They actually have all this concrete poured out, but I'd like to show what it takes to put in here. There's, there are multiple steps of installing these structures here and a lot of rebar. And as always, Eric gets to count every single little piece of that rebar. But you can see with these tight corridors, even this top right photo here, that concrete truck has to come in. They have to use a bucket or an excavator with a bucket to drop that concrete in. So it's kind of a slow and moving pace project task to get that completed. And as usual, a lot of storm sewer. There's some big boxes, some big pipe, water line work over here, and then getting our mainline subgrade up to snuff. And that's some big boxes right there that are going through that whole corridor to collect all this rainfall we got. You can see the size of some of this pipe that's being installed. So here's a photo more of the subgrade here. This has been a challenge because, as you can imagine, whenever we get rain, it just saturates that clay soil and holds in there. So it's on the contractor to kind of get that farmed up, and Eric out there with his nuclear density gauge to check the moisture content, check the density, and make sure nothing's unsatisfactory before we start putting rock on top of it. So it's been a few times I've had to manipulate that to get it to the right parameters of where that moisture content needs to be. Then they come in and put their fabric down that's overlapped here, and then we start putting some AB3 rock on here, which also has to be moisture conditioned and make sure it's at the right compaction there. And this is a photo over here of them forming up one of the valley gutters for the drives. And a little bit more on the drives here. So this one's actually rodeo here. Funny story is this is the base asphalt. I believe that's Parrington, isn't it? That photo there. That's one of them. So that's base asphalt. So the contractor is actually working on 135, some of the North Junction stuff that we just talked about. And that asphalt mix design is, it's called the Super Pave mix design is what KDOT calls it. It's a very kind of a top tier mix design. And they made extra of it for what they were doing there. And so they called us up. We verified with KDOT. We verified with Ann, of course. And you actually have a surface lift of Super Pave asphalt. So you guys got some really good asphalt for the same price of what the mix designs called out for this job. So it's nice when we can work with things like that to make sure it's good and checks and balances, but we actually got some good product there. So like I said, I want to focus more on phase 2C, which we're going to be moving into. I usually walk through the whole 37th to 45th, how we're working on the east side. I think a lot of the public's pretty used to that now. It's been there for a while now. But phase 2C, the contractor hasn't given me a firm date, but we're expecting them to be moved in next week sometime. So I've heard anywhere between the 11th and the 18th. Of course, they'll get their message board out with the 7 days notice saying what it is, because this does impact eastbound traffic, through 45th. Get that message board out there, get all the traffic control up, get the detour set up, all that stuff. But that is coming here in the near future. So I wanted to make that announcement. And so I want to talk a little bit more what it is. So right now on the east half of Woodlawn is what we're used to being shut down. Phase 2C will actually shut this quadrant down of the intersection. And then the south half of 45th, basically Woodlawn east to just past St. James Street, and then west of Woodlawn before Hillcrest. And then they'll also close down the east half of Woodlawn north of 45th. So traffic will stay the same on Woodlawn itself from the tracks to 45th with northbound only. But then we'll only have westbound traffic through this phase. And so there'll be a detour set up. And I want to give it an aerial so people get a little more familiar where we're at and where we're sitting at here. Again, it's kind of the same thing. We're coming westbound here. From the Catholic Care Center, the furthest west drive, we have east and westbound traffic allowed there. And Hillcrest, you can have east and westbound traffic there. But if you're coming north here, you can choose to go west only or continue on north. And so that's going to make it as feasible as possible for them to complete this work quickly. And so when I back this out, I got another aerial here. So individuals that live on St. James Street, this contractor's been pretty good about either working half at a time, or if they shut down the whole thing, knock it out as quick as possible. Similar to Dollar General, they worked half on the time, so we weren't impacting them too much. And same with the Mexican restaurant here when we'll do that, those Canados. But individuals that live on St. James, of course, they can come in west, hit Rushwood, carry over. Or, this is only when that drive is shut down. It won't be shut down for the entire phase 2C. They're pretty good. We've been on them. Whenever you're going to shut a whole drive down, make sure you're getting out door knockers, going around, notifying everybody so they can expect this. No one wants to wake up to go to work in the morning and realize their drive is completely shut down.
How long do you expect that to be westbound only?
So phase 2C won't take terribly long, but phase 2D is westbound only as well. And so what I've been told is the goal is by the end of this year, we're going to be done with phase 2 completely. So that will open up
5 to 6 months.
with 2C, 2D is what I'm being told on that. Of course, we're going to press them to get this done as soon as possible. The nice thing is whenever you start opening up more areas, that allows the contractor to produce more material and knock more out. So we're going to stay on top as much as we can.
Dakota, Dakota, what is 2D? Explain what the next
So,
phase
yep.
is so we understand that.
2D is, the gray area is work that will be completed. The orange area is work they'll be working in. So 2D is just flipping the scale a little bit. So we'll be on the northeast corner of the intersection, the north half of Woodlawn, north half of 45th, east and west of Woodlawn. That also will be westbound traffic only during that phase. So phase 2 and its subphases are the beef of this project. Once we get to phase 3, we have north and southbound traffic all the way up Woodlawn. We have east and westbound traffic all the way through 45th. So once we get through, I'll call it the gauntlet of phase 2, it's going to lighten a lot more. But like I
Mr. Mayor.
said,
Quick question on that. Is there already a traffic control plan for this area? I'm just curious. Is it the plan to route the traffic that's heading eastbound on 45th Street through the neighborhoods, or is just to shut down all of 45th Street from Oliver
no,
and
so
make it one way?
it does have its own traffic control plan, which will be put in place between this week and early next week. They'll cover the signs and stuff until they're officially ready to make the transition. They'll pull the signs off and everything be in effect. So we'll have cones set up all along this, similar to how Woodlawn is right now, closing off that south half. And then this detour, if you're going to Hillcrest, you can carry through and hit Hillcrest. But if you're intending to go through the intersection, you'll have to turn around and flip back. So if you're going to go through, the detour will be hit Oliver, 37th over, come up Rock and get back on the 45th. And that will be in place. Right now it's the detour to get the traffic southbound through Woodlawn over west to Oliver and south back to 37th.
So a citizen contacted me last night about, they got a notice of that 45th was going to be closed. And that was the first information I ever had that was going to happen just right away. I mean, I knew it was going to happen eventually because
Right.
I'd seen that plan. But I was just curious, did we send notices? Did we hang door hangers or something on?
No, we've actually
the
the
doors
past
or
2
anything?
progress meetings been bringing this up because we knew it was coming as well. And the whole thing's like 7 days notice. Let's make sure we get this out here. Then we're going to go talk individually to these individuals, especially the businesses as well. To my knowledge, do you know what those door knockers that went out? What?
Yes, they were for the door knockers were for the closure of Odessa, for those citizens.
Okay.
For the
Okay, this has been too far away from Odessa. They were over at
Yeah.
Shepherd's Crossing, so that's too far away.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, we've been very intentional on our progress meetings of talking this and make sure we're relaying the message out. I still have an email in my draft box ready to send out to the first responders. Hey, this is the date's happening. The schools, the churches, all of them. So if something got out, I apologize about that. I do.
They said it's supposed to start today. So
Yeah.
they told me last night. But
Yeah. Yeah. Right now you can still drive east and westbound on 45th. You still have that full access and you will until next week or so.
Okay, but you'll give us as much notice as possible.
As much notice as
We'll let
possible.
Mr. Lasher knows so that we can get
Yep.
all of our things done in Bel Air. as
Yep. I
far as-
was
our-
actually today after our progress meeting, I was emailing Tristan Terhune all the information we have and graphics and whatnot so we can get that information out to the public.
So I think it's been a while since you've been here. I don't remember the last time you were here. I think maybe a meeting got canceled or you.
I think they
couldn't
had
make it or something.
MKC come to the last
So,
one is what it
I
was.
do have one concern. I would appreciate it if you'd look into it.
Yeah.
The sidewalk that's south of Rodeo on the east side is getting overrun by water in one section. And it is not just because of the June rains. It happened before the June rains.
Okay.
Okay. So I understand the June rains, but I just want to make sure that the finished product isn't going to still have that overrun, that concrete was really poured correctly at the right levels.
Absolutely.
It looks like maybe not, but I'm not the expert here. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I mean, that's our goal when this is done. We don't want bird bass and extra ponding. I mean, that's not the intent of improving this whole corridor. So we'll definitely look into that.
It's actually holding mud there. It's going to be dirt 2 or 3 inches deep if it doesn't get some kind of drainage work done.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely dive into that.
Any other questions for Mr. Zimmerman?
I'll finish this up here. Just upcoming activities, the same as complete the phase 2 storm sewer, east half of Quail Ridge drainage structure, which is wrapping up, should be getting backfilled here soon. Then start on our curb and gutter and start seeing a lot more asphalt and concrete going down and start seeing this move along. And like I said, we're looking towards the end of this year. I was hoping to have a new updated schedule from the contractor today. We didn't get that today, so I'm hoping to have that this week, and that will provide better dates next time we hear of when these phase 2Cs, 2Ds are actually completing and opening. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, I think I should cut that short on you.
You're all right. No, you're perfect. That's very glad.
Yeah.
Kind
And,
of long. So when does the work south of the railroad start?
So that one's been August. I'll answer it in short. August is when it is. So City of Wichita is doing a water line project on 37th Street on the south side of it that incorporates some work that does play into staging our activities. And so it's going to impact the storm sewer. And of course, storm sewer is the first thing you got put in. So
So that's drinking water, not storm
that's
sewer?
drinking water. Yeah. Yep. It was originally actually a part of our utility. I say our Bel Air Wichita's utility project last summer. But to complete the work is actually taking a 24-inch main, 36-inch water main, pulling it out and doing a down and under to avoid this proposed storm sewer for this project. City of Wichita's infrastructure wasn't set up to do that kind of shutdown. It would actually affect the booster pump and affect a lot of the residents with their water pressure. So they pull that out, and they're basically adding redundancy now into their system. And so we're very fortunate the contractor that got that work for Wichita is the same contractor doing the storm sewer for our project. So they're able to keep us in the loop of what can we do to keep things parallel? What can we do to keep things moving forward? Of course, material delays in today's society has been drastic. But today they said they'll be done August. So that means, I imagine, late this month, early next month, we'll start seeing that road get ripped out and storm sewer going in.
So just so it's clear for citizens, and I think that's what you meant, you don't have what's been backed up, because originally we were looking at summer of 2023 when it would totally be done, and because of June's rain, that's going to be pushed back. Obviously, is that what you're saying?
The overall completion of the project, I think it's still summer of 23. It's, the construction always varies, so you always track your critical path. But basically, what it's turned into now is the Woodlawn north of the tracks has become its own phase. South of its tracks has become its own phase and running in parallel. Right now, when you're coming north on Woodlawn, you kind of veer off to cross the railroad tracks and you come back. It may very well be we finish that north portion north of the tracks and we keep traffic on that carrying north on the new pavement we built while we do the east half south of the tracks, which is not the original plan, but we got the cards we were dealt. And so this may be an option to improve the travel of the public to get through here. So yeah, like I said, I wish I had that updated schedule. I definitely will by the next time I come back to give an update, and we can really dive into milestone dates of what the public can know and expect.
Good. I am kind of interested. How many working days did you guys charge in June? Do you know off the top of your head?
It was minimal,
I was less than 10.
less than 10. Yeah. I mean, as you know,
Yeah.
it rained, and then you got your recovery days, especially when we're doing in clay soils and
Having to pump everything. Yep.
you pump all the water out and farm that ground up and hopefully expose and we got 100-degree heat now. So, I mean, there's no excuses to get rocking and rolling here. So,
I just wanted to ask that question because 20 days is about what you'd normally be able to charge, and just so everybody knows, that's a big impact. So,
Yeah.
only getting 10 days, that's a lot.
yeah, usually don't see that in June, May for sure, April. But,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
when they've had to pump the water out due to the rain, where are they pumping the water to?
a lot of times it goes through the Quail Ridge drainage area. So out there, and we got a rock ditch check we put up. So, because whenever you start pumping, you
But
actually pull
it
some.
doesn't go into the sewer.
It does not go in the sewer.
Okay.
No. Nope. If it does, for some reason, they have to put BMPs on the end of the hose to protect it so that silt does not transport into it. But a lot of contractors try to avoid that because it's hard to manage that. So,
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Zimmerman? Well, thank you for your time and your report, and I'm glad to hear Perrington is open. I drove by there today, and it didn't look like it was going to be open right so quick, but maybe I missed the big opportunity this afternoon.
yep. Yep. Well,
Okay.
should have ribbon cutting for it.
We've had a lot of
I'm-
citizens concerned about that.
Oh, and understandably so.
Yeah.
I definitely understand that. So I'm glad to announce that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Next, we move on to citizens' concerns, and I do have two citizens that wish to speak. So the first one is Betty Martine, and she asked for 6 minutes, so I'm going to allow her to have 6 minutes. Normally, we only allow 3 minutes for the citizen concerns. Ms. Martine.
I'm Betty Martine from the city of, 4701 North Woodlawn. I'm also vice president of the Senior Club Incorporated. And we're here tonight to tell you some of my coworkers and friends came with me. It's a sad situation. Some of you members know in 1987, Senior Club Incorporated put together a senior club. Everybody in Bel Air was invited to come. They had covered dish. They came in on weekdays because there was only 2 girls in our office building, period. The rest was maintenance and all of those other stuff. We wrote letters for a time to let people, to mail out to people so that they would know what was going on in the city. We asked residents to bring papers and articles to us, and we took pictures of it. Cheryl was real good on computer. I wasn't. I had to learn. But since then, I don't know when it was, but years ago, there was a squabble because they kind of split. When this building was built in 204, the new people came up here. Not new people, but one of the senior groups, and we stayed at the rec center. People say, well, why do we have 2? Okay, you can look at me and my friends. We are quite a bit older than that other group. We do a lot of activities, and they're more than welcome to come to ours anytime and join us. Yes, Mr. Welch, we charge a office code. We charge $5 a year. You pay your $5, you can go to our Christmas party. And also, we donated the bench to the city park, Bel Air Park. Yes, it came out of the money that came from the city that was helping us. But where do the benches come from? They all come from taxpayers' money. So we have a directory. We have a president, vice president, which I am, and secretary, treasurer, members at large. We have three people. We also have 2 calling committees. These people that are on the calling committee, they call all of our residents that are in our club, check on them. If they need to go to the store, somebody goes by and takes them. Go to the doctor, somebody goes by and takes them, and all this kind of stuff. Every time, 3 to 2 years, this old feud, I have no idea what it was, don't care what it was. Get over it. Well, we've had it. I'm not fighting anymore. We've left. We're going to go down to active aging, take our names off of your stuff. You keep your money. We can handle it ourselves. We go to breakfast on first Tuesday of every month, 8:30. We go to lunch second Tuesday every month at 11:30. Our board has a meeting from 10 o'clock until 11. And anytime you want to come join, you feel free to do so. The third Tuesday, we have a dinner. We found people with a loving heart in Bel Air that is giving us a room free, no questions asked. And as long as we keep it clean, do our thing. Remember, these seniors were probably among the people that walked the petition 1980, and before that in the 70s, to become a city. You all live in Bel Air. Make sure you tell people Bel Air. I don't live in the city of Wichita. I don't want to live in the city of Wichita. And it infuriates me. It becomes, oh, Wichita, Wichita. I don't live there. I live in Bel Air. Remember it. And we would just like to thank you for everything you've given us and everything that you've helped us do as a community. Anytime you'd like to come to our dinners or just come by to visit, it'd be wonderful. You can come. In our directory, which this gentleman prints himself, has everybody's everybody's name, everybody's phone number, and you can go call them anytime you want to. We thank you for everything you've given us, and just to let you know, we're no longer connected with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I can shut it off. Okay. No, I was my timer. That's all it was. We're fine. Thank you. All right. Next, we have Mr. Gary O'Neill.
I'm Gary O'Neill. I live at 4967 North Hillcrest in Bel Air. I've been a resident of Bel Air since 1987. I'm here to speaking tonight about fireworks. We just completed 4th of July. A lot of fireworks in the city that went off, and I hope everyone had a safe evening. Fireworks were not allowed originally in the city of Bel Air, and approximately 10 years ago, the city agreed to have fireworks in the city of Bel Air. In the initial policy, there were 4 areas that were designated, 4 permits that could be had, and they had to be sponsored by nonprofits. And this was in an effort to help nonprofit organizations have an opportunity to raise some funds for the local community for their projects. Since that initial time, the Sunrise, the Bel Air Lions Club, and most recently Wichita Heights High School have been nonprofits that have sponsored events, fire tents, so that we could help raise some funds for our projects. And most recently this year, the Bel Air Lions Club donated $3,300 to buy the disc golf equipment for the new disc golf park in the city of Bel Air. And some of those funds came from us negotiating with the fireworks companies for us to sponsor their events and either work the tents or manage them or whatever we could do. It came to my attention last Friday that in 2020, the fireworks policy was revised and the nonprofit status was removed from being a sponsorship. Why that was removed, I do not have any idea, and I only found out on Friday. I don't know if any of the other nonprofits that regularly sponsor events here are aware of that, but under the current policy that was revised in 2020, any for-profit business could come in, apply for one of the 4 permits, and the permit fee, whether you're a profit or for-profit or not-for-profit, nonprofit, the city gets the same revenue. That's the structure for what the permit costs. So it will make no difference to the city. You will not get any more revenue from a for-profit than you will from a nonprofit. I was asked that the governing body review that policy because nonprofits struggle all the time trying to raise funds for our projects that go back into the community. And if it remains and some of the for-profits take over those 4 that historically the nonprofits have sponsored, it would be a loss of revenue for us, and I think also for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we should look at that policy, and we'll ask that we look at that maybe on workshop sometime soon. All right, moving on to, unless there's other citizens that want to speak, I only received 2 cards. So if there are other citizens that would like to speak, this is your chance. Seeing none, I'll move on to council member reports, and we'll start with Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to echo, I hope everybody enjoyed their July 4th and everybody was safe. Wanted to touch on a few quick things. Was able to attend the Federal Issues Forum. Representative Ron Estes was in town. I attended it representing the South Central Corridor Coalition. And Tyle Asher actually attended too. You might have some comments on it. It was a good gathering. There was probably 100 plus more leaders, local leaders, interested in federal update, and touched on a gamut of things. And the Kansas Infrastructure Summit, which is actually next week. Just a reminder, if anybody's interested, I don't think it's too late to attend. I think they're hosting it over there off of Oliver and 29th. I know KDOT and industry partners will be in attendance talking through kind of everything that there is to know about the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. Wanted to touch on the Bel Air Chamber briefly. Their monthly luncheon, just to remind everybody, all citizens and local businesses are invited to attend that. It's a monthly lunch every first Wednesday of the month. So tomorrow, feel free to join and support our local businesses and get engaged. And then I wanted to say a thank you to the Bel Air Rec. Again, baseball season's over. They did a fabulous job wrapping up baseball season, and to the Lions Club as well for hosting the snack stand. That was always a fun thing for the families in our community. And then I noticed on social media, and some of you probably have seen this also, but just to reiterate, there was a fishing clinic this weekend that'll be hosted at the pond over here by Central Park Pool. And it is to encourage, it's a kind of a collaboration. Looks like Fish Kansas, Wonder Women of Kansas. I think the Bel Air officers will be assisting. So just encourage people to get outdoors and check out fishing. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. David.
Mr. Mayor, no report. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did attend the CCUA meeting on June 23rd. It was a very short meeting. The only real topic of substance that I recall was the budget, and we did adopt the final budget for the CCUA for 2023. That's a necessary prerequisite for our budget process here in Bel Air so that we can accurately incorporate the CCUA expenses that'll be included as part of our budget. So we did approve that, and the construction on the CCUA administration building, the expansion that was approved several months ago, is about to start and expected to complete in a pretty short period of time. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
Just a few comments about fireworks. For the most part, I think it went pretty well, but we still had a few people that can't follow the rules. And I don't know if those people were getting their information from the local TV stations and didn't understand that Bel Air was different or not. I wondered if maybe in the future, next year, whatever, we should be handing out the rules as part of the receipts for the fireworks, because we had people shooting them for the whole week before. Nothing that was really upsetting, not like in previous years where we've had aerials going off for weeks. I don't know if our police did a little better job this year or not. I kind of wondered. I saw somebody sitting down at the park kind of watching our neighborhood. So they may have been reminding people that they weren't supposed to do that. But all in all, I think it went pretty good.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Hamburg.
No report, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So I have a short report, just a couple of items. On June 22nd, I did attend the grand opening of the KPTS new Kansas headquarters, which is kind of in Bel Air's backyard now. It's on 32nd Street, just off of Rock Road, east of Rock Road. Nice facility with room for both growth and office space to rent. So in addition to new studios for broadcasting and recording, they have a children's education and discovery center and a PBS Family Kansas Museum. So both of those are free of charge to people who want to visit them. I also attended on June 23rd, the Chisholm Creek Utility Authority board meeting. Mr. Smith covered everything of significance, so I won't repeat that. As a reminder to voters, July 12th, that is next Tuesday, is the last day to register to vote in the August 2nd election. So if you need to register, you can get the form online at Sedgwick County Election Office or call them. Also, if you want to vote by mail, applications for mail-in ballots can be made anytime, even today, until June 26th for the August 2nd election. Sedgwick County will start to send those mail ballots on July 13th. So contact the election office online is sedgwickcounty.org/elections, or you may call them at 316-660-7100. And lastly, on August 2nd election, there is a Kansas constitutional amendment that I think Senator Masterson was talking about. Every registered voter on this can vote on this amendment regardless of party affiliation or no party affiliation. Yes, even independents. That means you can vote on this election. And then the other item, our city manager sent out information to the city council members regarding the League of Kansas Municipalities October annual conference in Overland Park. I will be attending this conference and encourage all council members to consider attending this conference. This is a good opportunity to learn new things about government and network with other elected city officials around the state. So that I'll ask our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Picking up where you left off, a reminder that we are in the 45-day period prior to an election that began on June 18th. So people can place political signs within the public right-of-way in Bel Air. This is distinct from Wichita, where that's not allowed. Those signs should not exceed 4 feet in height and 8 square feet. Two-faced signs are permitted, and they may be placed in the right-of-way, but not in such manner as to pose visibility hazards or issues for pedestrians or cars. During this election period, you may see Public Works moving those signs, as sometimes the right-of-way has to be maintained, and they will generally put them back, and that is not a violation of this ordinance. And 2 days after the election, so we're in the 45-day period prior to the August 2nd election, 2 days after that, those signs need to be picked up and removed, or the city code enforcement, depending on priorities, may begin to pick those signs up. But as of late, the city has not picked up any political signs. Also, we just wanted to briefly cover sidewalks. The council last meeting passed an ordinance, or not passed an ordinance, passed the sidewalk policy. And we got some questions about who is eligible for that grant. And we do have standards that drive what type of sidewalk repairs versus replacement are allowed. So city ordinance does require the homeowner to maintain their own sidewalk. That hasn't changed. The grant does not absolve that at all. A grade 1 sidewalk repair would be patchwork. A homeowner can do this on their own, but sometimes with the right skill set. Usually you're using some sort of filler to fill in that patchwork, and it would not be generally eligible for the grant program because it's just patchwork. A homeowner would not need a permit to do this sort of work. A homeowner would possibly need to call 811 if there are any kind of dinging or moving of anything. But depending on the severity of the crack, a homeowner might be able to do this themselves. Grade 2 is more leveling, and the sidewalk is in disrepair. So you can have a combination of a few cracks plus leveling. That might make the sidewalk damage eligible for the city to pay for it, to have our contractor come and do the work. This sort of grade 2 repair usually requires some sort of equipment to be brought in. And if a homeowner were to do this, they would need a permit. And if you wanted to use sidewalk grant money, you would obviously have to have a contractor do the work and the city inspect it as well. Okay, there's that. And finally, grade 3, this is really what the city was hoping to assist with, the most severe damage. You'll see in the policy, it goes into severe replacement needed. Usually this sort of sidewalk damage has to be completely replaced. And a homeowner would need a license and to be a Bel Air contractor to do it on their own property. But generally you see contractors exclusively doing this work. And the sidewalk is altogether removed and replaced, and it's most likely eligible for grant funding. The issue comes up with costs. If there's a tree root issue, the city will require that tree to be removed. Those costs aren't covered. And depending on how much damage there is, you know, the grant, I think the program right now is $15,000. So those costs may not be completely paid. But those are the three types of sidewalk repairs that we contemplated and that we anticipate getting requests for. The more light patchwork, people may see that they're not approved for grant funding, but those still need to be repaired. And the more severe work is what we're hoping the grant will take care of for the safety of Bel Air residents.
So, Ms. Kelly, just to clarify, the recent policy that we just passed only allows the grant money to be used if a city hired contractor is used. The citizens are not to be hiring contractors and come back and asking for reimbursement from the city.
That is correct.
And that's a change from what it was last year.
Correct. Yes, correct. There was some confusion with that before, and you're exactly right. We wanted to clarify that though a homeowner may do some of this work,
right,
you would not be eligible for the grant funding. The grant funding is only when you have a contractor do the work.
But the city hired contractor.
City hired
Not any
contractor.
contractor.
Exactly. City
Right.
hired contractor doing the work.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're clear on that because it sounded like that might be confused. So
Yes.
thank you for helping us with the clarification.
Thank
you. Mr. Schmidt, would you come to the microphone? Please come to the microphone.
Okay. Who's responsible for the wheelchair ramps that lead down into the street?
Okay. Very good.
Mr. Mayor, I would, the sidewalk grant program does say that the city will take care of wheelchair ramps as we get to them under our ADA requirements. We're actively working on those. We're not able to do them all at once, but depending on if the ramp is already in place and damaged, then the city would come out and repair it. But as far as adding ramps where there should be ramps, we're still kind of progressively working on our plan to get those ramps in. The plan is there, and so we're in compliance with our ADA requirements.
So there's some requirements now to put bubbles on those ramps also for the blind. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about bubbles.
Okay.
I'm not sure
I
exactly.
thought that was part of the new latest ADA requirements, but
Okay.
I could be wrong. So,
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure, but I can look into that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from council? Thank you. We'll move on to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I hope everyone had a happy and safe 4th. I did want to remind everyone if they use the street to shoot off their fireworks, they need to clean that up, not wait for our street sweeper to come by and pick that up. That's their responsibility. So just pick that up. Should be safe to put in the trash by now. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention to council and our citizens that live on gravel roads is petitions for paving the gravel roads will be going out tomorrow. The mayor signed those letters today. But we will be holding a open house on July 19th at 5:30 p.m. here at City Hall. So anyone that lives on a gravel road that receives a petition, if they'd like to come in, and Garver will be there to explain exactly what will take place. And then I'll be there to answer questions about how special assessments work and the financing piece of that. So just wanted citizens to know they'll have an opportunity to ask some questions about that work.
If I remember right, you recommended that no one from the governing body attend that meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. I mean, unless, you'd like to be there, you can, but really the idea is not to discuss any merits of it. I think that's already been discussed, and the council made the decision to pay for part of the drainage for that. So really it's more about what the project is, how it'll affect each of the areas, and then to answer questions of how special assessments work.
Very good. Thank you. Anything else? I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. All right, move on to item 11A, consulting contract with Burns and McDonnell. So Bel Air CCUA board members have reviewed studies from MKEC and Wilson Engineers suggesting the need for sewer plant to be upgraded as well as expanded. New CCA manager has also shared some concerns related to the sewer treatment as well as water production. The Bel Air staff nor Bel Air CCUA board members have true understanding of the plant operations or capacities and are concerned about the conflicting reports. As a result, we believe a performance audit is needed to answer the many unanswered questions. Staff contacted several parties who they thought might be good candidates for such an audit. Burns and McDonnell was the unanimous choice to handle the performance audit. They have several experts and are familiar with the CCUA plant. And we have a representative from the firm here to give us a presentation and answer questions. And if you come to the podium and introduce yourselves, I appreciate that. And please make sure you speak in the microphone because people at home don't hear us if we don't speak in the microphone.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Brian Meyer with Burns and McDonnell, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And Don has a couple of handouts that he's going to disseminate while I get started with introductions. I'm going to have Don introduce himself, and then we'll go into a little bit of information about Burns and McDonnell and our thoughts and how we would approach this project. As I said, I'm with Burns and McDonnell. I've been with Burns and Mac for 23 years now, and in the region for over 30. Most of my career has been spent planning and implementing infrastructure projects. So this sort of project, I recognize the importance and what it means to a community, because it's really this foundational work that sets the stage for success in the future. So with that, I'll let Don go ahead and introduce himself.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Mayor and Council, good to be here this evening. I just want to say I haven't been with Burns & McDonnell as long as Brian has. I've only been with Burns & McDonnell, even with my age, only for a little over 4 years. But prior to that, I spent the last 35 years in water resources and water management and development and design as well. My first 17 years, I've spent my time in groundwater resources with specifically with the Equispez Aquifer, which is where your existing well field and source water comes from for the city of Bel Air. And it had involved regulatory oversight as well as well design, well inspection, groundwater investigations, very wide variety of different components for those 17 years. Following that, I spent about 15 years with the city of Hutchinson, wearing several different hats, simultaneously, anywhere from superintendent of water production and treatment, superintendent of water and wastewater treatment operations, environmental geologist was thrown in there as well, and also assistant public works director and environmental services manager. Having spread myself a little too thin, and I was reached to the point of retirement, I felt it was time to move on and try some new challenges. And at that time, I retired from the city of Hutchinson, and had the great opportunity to actually work with a number of engineering firms over the years. And so I got I think it was a blessing to work with the different contractors, different engineers, different firms over time, and so I kind of knew who, if I went to work into that side of into the consulting side or the other side of the ownership, as we used to call it, and of who I would like to work for and who I wouldn't like to work for. And Burns & McDonnell was absolutely at the top of the list with not only their staff and informative folks that they've had, but the excellence and experience with their design engineers. What I bring to the table to Burns & McDonnell is simply an operationals and administration background. I have a class, both a licensed for water treatment as well as wastewater treatment for the state of Kansas, in the state of Kansas. And I also tend to bring more looking at things from your side of the table, so to speak, from a public works and utility side of the table, as far as what can be improved designs to make things better for operations folks and better for the owner. So that's really what I contribute to this team that we have put together for this project.
Could you elaborate? You said you had license for water and wastewater. What level are your licenses?
My water license is Class 4, which is the highest level in the state of Kansas. My wastewater license is Class 2. I was actually scheduled to take Class 4 testing, but my retirement beat the schedule for taking the test. So, one of my few regrets.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you, Don.
Not working. Oh, she took it. See how that works without it.
First test. But no, yeah, you can see why with Don's experience, kind of our philosophy in putting teams together so that you can have those multiple perspectives and really get an idea of the operations, the regulatory environment, and all of the combination of things that it takes to be successful. And I think you'll see that in some of the other team members that we're going to go through as well. Just a little real quick about Burns Mac. We've been around a while. Our firm was founded in 1898. Our first major project was in 1900 in Iola. It was a combined water and power plant. The neat thing is, and in some of the literature that Don handed out, they're still a client today. We just completed a water wastewater facility planning, master planning effort for them not very long ago. So we're very proud of that history. And that's how it was formed. 123 years, you get a lot of experience. I really wanted this one in there, even though this is really focused on planning and design engineering, just the understanding of what's going on out there in the market really informs, how to efficiently implement projects, envision the projects and implement them. I think it's been already mentioned tonight about supply chain and the challenges that are out there. So understanding where your priorities are and how to interact with the construction market, the supply chain, funding. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Those are all critical things that you've got to factor into the discussion. So tremendous amount of experience and nationwide, we're getting up around 10,000 employees. So we've got a tremendous resource base to draw from, and we can really get those teams put together. And here's the team that we picked for this project. And there's a couple of things here. Sarah Lothman is fairly new to Burns Mac, but she's also got that same kind of diverse experience where she's been on the owner side and ran a utility, a fairly large utility out east, but she's been on the consulting side too. So having that experience on both sides of the fence really strengthens her strategic planning capabilities. So that's why Sarah was selected to lead this project. I'll be your primary point of contact. She would be your project manager. I'll skip over Carrie and go to Tracy, because Tracy brings kind of another unique perspective to our team. Tracy was with state government for the majority of his career, spent the last 13 to 14 years, I believe, leading the Kansas Water Office. And now for us, he's looking at all of this chaos that is the financial market. As far as some of those grants that we talked about, he's going to be at the Infrastructure Summit next week. He's on the advisory committee. So he's really helping us stay in the forefront and looking for those opportunities, those positive opportunities to bring money to the table, because we know the demands are great, the needs are great. We've got to find the right funding. So Tracy's a big asset to the program. Then really, Carrie and Jenny bring the process expertise to the table, because that's the other piece. We got to be able to understand, what processes are working at both water, wastewater, and have the technical expertise to understand how that interacts with the regulatory environment, what changes will be necessary. So having those specific technical resources on the team really expedites. And this is really a sense of urgency that we understand that you have to get this moving, make decisions, but make informed decisions that you can be confident in as you move forward. As described, there's been several studies done. We're going to leverage that work, but then we're going to make honest assessments of what it says and what appears to be the right answers. And I think KDHE was mentioned earlier. Our philosophy with KDHE is that they're our partner in a lot of these projects. If you communicate early, often, and effectively with KDHE, you're not going to waste time and effort. You're going to go down a path that's viable, and it's going to get you in a good place from a regulatory perspective long term. So that's our philosophy on putting together the teams, how it mixes. So the scope of work that we've looked at, this is a very high level outline. There's a lot more details in the full scope, but the first one's an important one I wanted to point out once again is that you guys have already done a lot, and absolutely we want to leverage what's already been done so that it is as efficient a process as possible. And leveraging that for foundation is going to save money in the long run. And it's the importance of making good decisions now that provide the value later. So we're going to really leverage that work. Once again, we're going to communicate with KDHE for that regulatory review. We're going to work with your staff, your CCUA staff, so we can understand what their concerns are. New operator, new vision, new thoughts. We got to understand how those fit into the equation, and that'll be heavily weighed into the process. Condition assessment, wanted to put that one there because it's a little bit different in that there's probably been a fair amount of that done, but looking at it from a perspective of how it's married to the process performance. You could have a process that's working very well, but a piece of infrastructure that's failing. You could have a piece of infrastructure that is sound and will last forever, but it's not doing what it needs to from a treatment performance perspective. So we got to put those two things together and understand what the full picture is and what the highest value is. So when there's a plan that's established, and this plan doesn't happen in a vacuum either, there's going to be a lot of communication, and in this short time frame, it's going to be pretty intense. But that's the only way to make this successful. And when there is an agreed upon plan or path or philosophy about what to do with the facilities, how to change operational practices or modify infrastructure, it could be one or both, then there will be the cost estimates, which are going to be critical in this day and age too. Cost estimates, and once again, linking back to the construction market and to what the supply chain is doing. How maybe you have to pre-order something that's got high value. So there's going to be a lot of interaction at that tail end that's going to inform what the project really looks like. This timeline is really couldn't do anything justice because it says September twice, but it really should say August and September because there's going to be a lot of parallel paths in there. A lot of things happening at the same time when you're looking at those processes and looking at the condition assessments, having those interviews with operators. So to do this in a 3-month window, there's going to be a lot of overlap, and we're committed to and prepared to do that. So, and with that, I would stand for any questions. And once again, we really appreciate this opportunity to be here.
Any questions for Mr. Meyer or Don? I don't get
Don Coachy.
Coachy. Yeah. Thank you.
I heard it's pronounced.
I almost said Coke because here it looks like Coke, but it's,
No,
I see that it's an I.
I tried to change that I to an H to see if I could get to any inheritance. But
Didn't work out for you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
a couple questions here.
Yes, sir.
So what is your slide correct in that October would be the end date of the initiative?
Yes, that would be the intention to deliver the reports on both facilities in October. Don't see any reason why that is not viable unless we get into the tail end and there's something else that you just want to take a deeper dive into. But we fully believe that that's going to be a point where you will have some informative information to consider.
And when you talk about the deliverables, what are some examples of things that we should expect to receive as part of that report in October? What will that actually look like?
Yeah, there's going to be a series of reports, and and I almost envision these as, we see a lot of formats for reports. I almost look at these as tech memos, because you're going to have ones that talk about, and these are detailed better in the full scope, but something that looks at the process performance. A memo that's going to say, okay, for example, on the wastewater side, what is your current nutrient removal capability in the different processes? So you're going to have some look at that. You're going to have another one that's going to summarize the regulatory environment. How are we going to have to change those processes? What improvements are we going to have to make to meet future regulations? There's going to be a summary of the condition assessment that says, okay, we've got X number of years left in these pieces of infrastructure. This is vulnerable, and even in that process, when you're doing that, you're going to look at it and say, okay, you may have something that's vulnerable, but the risk of losing that is lower. So let's focus our initial investment, our priorities somewhere else. So it's really going to be quite a varied series of technical memos, and that's going to be part of that communication that's going to come frequently, so that you don't get hit with a report all at once, but you can start to take those smaller bites and understand. And then at the end, we'll figure how they all play together.
And then I guess finally, my last question is, in terms of those deliverables, will any of those deliverables include looking at the future growth of our city and how that will have an impact on the plant? One of the questions that I have is, as our city grows, and we've just annexed some new property into the city on the northeast part of our city, what's the feasibility of continuing to grow our city in that direction and also have the current plant service that? Will you be looking at anything to that effect?
Absolutely. The demand on both the water and wastewater side, as far as what the capacity to treat is or supply water, those are going to be a critical part of it. The good news is, once we go back to that data, there's been a lot of work done on that end, and we want to look at that, leverage that, figure out where it makes sense, maybe where there's discrepancies in that information about the projected growth. What is the demand going to be, from hydraulic capacity to wastewater treatment plant, maybe by a loading capacity, depending on what the nature of that waste load is. So we will definitely look at that, and then also, what is the true capacity of the water and wastewater treatment facilities? So, and figure out where there's shortages, potentially where there's opportunity to serve expanded population and expanded loading in the future.
So you mentioned technical memos, and we have some folks on the council that are fairly technical oriented, but some may not be so. I'm not, and that's not taken away from them, their areas of expertise. What I'm wondering is, how technical are they? Are they going to be like using a bunch of acronyms that there's no way, unless you're in wastewater and water treatment, you don't understand them? Or are we going to have some ability to understand what those mean?
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely. I mean, my philosophy throughout my career is that, a technical memo has to have the right level of process technical terms to be able to convey if it's going to be read by a regulator, but we've also got to have it so it can be digestible by the general public, because those will be public documents. So whether that's done in an executive summary, or you have a initial findings and followed up by the technical backup, that somebody else could pick it up and look at it and understand, okay, this is how they came to that conclusion, but here's what it is. And hopefully everybody can understand that. And honestly, we won't stop till everybody does understand it. And if there's questions, I think that's such an important part of, I think transparency was one thing that was talked about in this, from the regulatory down to the ratepayer. The more transparency, the better communication you can have through that whole spectrum. I agree with you completely. It's got to cover it all.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. David.
So you show 5 people working for 3+ months. Is it really going to take 15 man months to produce these technical reports? And then the follow-up on that is, how much labor effort is it going to be for the CCUA manager and staff during that time?
Yeah, that's a couple of great questions. And the answer for the first one is no, because not everybody will be dedicated 100% of the time, because there will be efforts made. Then they will step back to let some of the sub-project evolve, whether it's somebody else reviewing data, and they'll be moving in and out, but they'll be there at the critical junctures of the project. So that's going to be important, but it's not a full 15 man months of time to get this done, but it's going to be a well-coordinated 3 months. That's what it's got to be.
Do you
From
have an estimate for how much time that will be? Half of that, or?
I could go back and
30%?
look at the number of hours that were put into it, but I'm guessing it's more in that 2.5 to 3 total. I'd have to go back and look at the hours. It was interesting in that when we put this together, we got water and wastewater, and they both have unique issues. And it ended up being a relatively equal division of effort between the two. A lot more work done on the wastewater side, so more review, more foundational material. But the water side has some unique elements that, with the water rights and some other things that are going to make it a bit of an effort as well. So, but I do want to make one other point. With the agreement, there's a not to exceed amount. To us, the not to exceed amount is strictly that. If it can be completed for less than the hours that we estimated, that's what we'll strive to do. It's not like a lump sum. It's something that we want to get to the goals, get to the information you need as quickly as possible, because we know those dollars need to be invested later in actual infrastructure improvements. So the quicker we can get to the answer, and once again, that's a reason to have that frequent communication, so that if we do get to the answer sooner and we're building that confidence and have defensible answers, then that's where we'll want to be. So we'll look at that effort and get to the answers as efficiently as possible. As far as the staff, we will be very cognizant of the amount of time that we're taking and very respectful of scheduling with them so that we don't interrupt critical activities as they're doing. But the interaction is important, but we will do everything we can to make sure that it doesn't interrupt the service they provide, the critical services they provide. So, and we've done that for years, worked with staff, and we find a way to make the time without being too disruptive of their activities.
But at the same time, leverage the work that's already out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would expect to walk away from one of the first meetings with a pretty significant reading assignment to make sure we understand all of the work that's been done prior.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. David's question just about the staff. When I toured the CCUA a couple of months ago, talking to the plant manager, that they only have 5 employees, and like you mentioned, just being respectful of their time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dean.
Mr. Meyer, thanks for the presentation. It was pretty thorough. I did have kind of a follow-up on the not to exceed number. How confident are you with similar size projects that you guys have done in the past that you'll be able to balance the time, effort, and management of the staff with some of your larger projects that you've got going on? This being probably a smaller one in your bucket. How do you see that fitting into your guys' current workload, your current schedule?
That's a great question. And that's something we think about, when any opportunity comes to the door, is can we deliver? And we look at our resources and make that exact assessment. And when we started putting this team together, our confidence grew fairly quickly. So we talked about that leadership, kind of the leadership team, but we also, even as early as this morning, got together and talked about, who will do some specific condition assessments, who's going to do the things that are critical, those critical steps. So it's a smaller project, but no less important than any project that we do. And yeah, we absolutely look at that, and we're confident that we have the resources to deliver this project. And, it's a lot of the communities in the state of Kansas, it's a fairly comparable effort from a facility planning standpoint. Not always are you doing water and wastewater at the same time, but it's a fairly comparable effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for Mr. Meyer or Mr. Kochi? thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate the presentation. It's good information, and we need to have some discussion here and see what we're going to do.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you. So is there any discussion we want to make about this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David?
so do we have buy-in from CCUA on the time that it'll take to support this and the time frame that July to October?
I would have to defer to city manager.
No, there's a history here, and I know that the Bel Air CCUA board members actually requested that CCUA do this to answer some of the questions that we're looking to get out of this performance audit. They sent that to the TAC, which I am a member of the TAC, as well as Jacob Coy, who's the manager, and the city administrator for Park City. And I explained what the issues that we had questions with and wanted resolved, and the TAC didn't feel that the information was or felt that the information was already there and this really wasn't needed. And so I believe the CCUA board then took no action on having a performance audit done. So really it now falls into Bel Air's lap, and that's why it's on the agenda tonight. I believe Jacob, the plant manager, understands the request and why Bel Air is looking to do this. My hope is that he'll work with Burns and McDonnell to get him the information. Again, I think from our Bel Air standpoint, we see it as a value for CCU as a whole, and hopefully the information that's gathered from this benefits the CCUA as a whole and answers some of the questions. And my hope is that Jacob sees it as a benefit for him as well, because he's kind of in the middle of having two different studies done and having a third set of eyes look at which is correct, which the types of future needs and things like that would be beneficial. So my hope is that CCUA staff would see this as a benefit for them as well.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith?
This is definitely something that needs to be done. I think from my perspective, there's been these lingering questions that I think everyone has had for a while around what are the right numbers? What is the capacity? What needs to happen here? How can this plant serve or not serve the growing city of Bel Air in the future? My only concern is really on the cost side. The cost is honestly a lot higher than I was expecting. But it maybe is what it is. Can you speak to how this cost compared to the other proposals that you got, and just talk a little bit about, how comparable those numbers were, and then maybe finally talk about just the impact of budget on such a large expense like this?
So the other studies that were done included identifying and I think actually engineering some of those improvements that needed to be done on the sewer side. And if I remember right, they were in the $500,000 range or more, closer to $1 million, somewhere 500 to $1 million. MKEC did one report, Wilson did another. But that included some design and things like that. As far as our budget, one of the benefits of having substantial reserves, we have $1 million reserve in both water and sewer to easily cover this. So we would split it 50-50 between sewer and water. So each side's going to pay about $75,000. And I think the bigger issue, which we've talked about, is with the understanding that there's some possible financial benefits for the city to understand capacities, when expansion needs to take place, those things. And then, of course, with your next item is on the actual financial audit side of it. But just in staff's review of the information that we receive, it looks like there could be potential cost savings of $300,000 a year if things are done the way we think they need to be done. So understanding plant capacities, understanding the finances, there's a cost to gather that information, and if we're accurate, could it result in cost savings to $300,000 a year?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
I had a question too for Ty. Considering other staff time, is Ann or any other staff going to be involved in any sort of processing of the tech? Like, are they going to be involved at all, or is it going to be mainly handled between you and then presented to council as needed? I just wasn't sure. Besides Jacob, what other staff would be involved?
Yeah, from Bel Air side, not a lot. I was talking to Ann today. Some of the questions that I think Justin had asked about capacities, well, she'll probably look at some of that because she knows all of the sizes of our water and sewer mains running through Bel Air, and that's something that they'll want to look at. So she'll share some of that technical information that they need. But she doesn't have the expertise in running a plant, designing a plant, things like that. That's why we need them. And then probably spend more time working with me and the governing body to make sure the questions that we have are getting answered, and the information that we need to make decisions on plant expansions and things like that, that we get the information that we need. So it's really going to be more between myself and you all and Burns McDonnell.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions, concerns? My personal view of this is that we need this information because we just have had too many different conflicting information coming out. We need to get a solid handle on what this facility can do and what needs to be done to it. So that's just my view. Hearing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I make a
Mr. Mayor,
motion
Hamburg.
to, that we accept the motion, and I make a motion to approve the consulting agreement with Burns and McDonnell Engineering Company, Inc., and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Hamburg and a second by Mr. Dean. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David.
just one follow-up. Maybe this is for Mrs. Kelly, but do we have the legal standing to ask CCUA to do this audit as a city of Bel Air?
We do. Part of our, part of being the governing organization and also our covenant documents does talk about the cities or the plant. Either city may ask for an audit of said finances. It's a very general term. So we do have the ability to do that under our financial audit permission and also as part owner. You know, we have a duty, a fiduciary duty to make sure that what we own, we understand and we are being responsible with.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. We're moving on to item C is a consulting agreement with Lloyd Group LLC. As 50% membership of CCUA, Bel Air is responsible for debt service as well as operational costs for the treatment of sewage and water from the plant. Our staff has shared concerns regarding cost shares, interpretation of bond covenants, and what appears discrepancies in figures. After interviewing several accounting firms, the unanimous agreement was for Lloyd Consulting to handle the financial audit. Mr. Lasher would like to share some of Mr. Lloyd's experience and expertise.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott wanted to be here tonight, but he works with a lot of municipalities, and he's at a different city tonight doing an audit. So that's why he's not able to be here. So, but he sent me some information to share about him, and I'm happy to answer some questions. So the second piece of what we want to look at is the operational side, and then the second piece is the financial side. Is how have things been? Expenses been paid? How have the members been billed? What are the expenses? What are the revenues? And all the financial pieces of how CCUA operates. And of course, that's not on the engineering side, the operational side. That's what Burns and McDonnell will handle. So this is the financial side of it. So we contacted several auditing companies, and Lloyd Group. Scott came to the top and was the choice of the group that we put together to solicit this. So the reason being is Scott, he's got a BA in accounting from Tabor. Obviously, he's a certified public accountant since 1986. He's a certified government financial manager, a certified fraud examiner, Charter Global Management, certified numbers coach. And if you have any questions on any of these, Councilmember Hamburg may have the answers to the all this CPA stuff, because that's her expertise. So, but professionally, Scott actually started his own firm this year in 2022. But from 1990 till 2021, he was a partner in Swindle Jansen Hawk Lloyd LLC. So he was a partner of that, and then ventured out on his own, started his own company. And then before that, he worked for SJHL and Yerkes and Michaels as an auditor as well. So the thing that really brings Scott to the forefront is that he has immense knowledge and experience in local governments. So this is some of he works for the city of McPherson. The thing that we wanted was someone that understood public utilities. And so obviously working with cities, he understands that, but there are some unique situations like the McPherson Board of Public Utilities. That's all they do is utilities, and he audits them. McPherson Solid Waste Utility. He works with over 20 different cities, and he's got 10 years of local government city utility software development and consultant, both in Kansas and Oklahoma. So he really understands utilities, and that's obviously what we're looking at here. Does have federal experience. He's worked with Department of Transportation, Agriculture, Interior, really most of the federal agencies he's worked with. And he's also helping with Spark. So what his role is going to be is he's going to look at the fee structure for how debt is paid for by all the members. He's going to determine the expenditures and where they calculate and billed correctly. He's going to calculate any discrepancies for billing of debt or operation and maintenance for each member city. He's going to assist us in creating equitable and appropriate bond structuring related to each member's debt versus their usage. He's going to advise on the best way to an appropriate way to split costs for operation and maintenance going forward. We know what they are done now and what they've done in the past, and he's going to look at that for future. And then he's going to help us in determining any language that we may need to make as far as future bond covenants. And then he's going to assist us in really any other questions we may have related to the financial pieces of it. But he understands what the scope is. He has experience in that, working specifically with utilities and public utility companies. And so that's what he's going to bring to the table as part of our team. So Any questions about Scott, his firm, or what his role is going to be in this?
Is there any discussion concerning Mr. Lloyd?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consulting agreement with the Lloyd Group LLC and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and second by Mr. David. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I'm going to ask for a 10-minute recess, and we may consider truncating some of the agenda items because it's already 9 o'clock and we do have a land bank meeting. Can I have a motion for a 10-minute recess? Do I need one?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion for a 10-minute recess.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and second by Ms. Hamburg. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We're in 10-minute recess. We can have a chance to turn the system on, okay? So, call the meeting back in order, and I had a discussion with Mr. Lasher about what we could maybe table on the agenda. So we've already decided we'll table item D and E, and quite possibly item 12, A and B. So we'll move on to item C, notice of revenue neutral rate intent form. So the legislature in 2021 created a revenue neutral rate. As discussed in our workshop, the city intends to exceed the revenue neutral rate while keeping the same property tax rate that was applied last year. It's 43.6565 mils. And the new budget process requires the city notify the county clerk of our intentions so notices can be sent and set our budget deadline. The notice of intent sent to the county clerk does not set the official property tax rate. City council will adopt that official rate when we pass the budget in September. And there may be some tweaking of that rate when the county sends out the tax bills due to property valuation changes from appeals, et cetera. So are there any questions of the city manager? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David,
make the motion to approve the notice of revenue neutral rate intent form, set the date of the revenue neutral rate hearing for September 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
motion by Mr. David and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion?
Just so I'm clear, from what Senator Masterson was saying, this year it's not going to cost the city any money to do this. Is that correct?
Yes, and then it does after that.
After this year starts costing us, we have to send the letters out. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Move on to item F. So, the bylaws of Bel Air Land Bank state all members of the Bel Air governing body shall make up the Land Bank Board. The terms run concurrent with the city council terms. As new council members, Emily Hamburg and Tyler Dang must be official appointed to the Land Bank. So these are items F and G on the agenda. Are there any questions for the staff?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to appoint Emily Hamburg to the City of Bel Air, Kansas Land Bank.
I'll second.
a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a
Yeah.
question. Do I vote on this or not?
You're not prohibited from voting on it as there's no financial interest, but it's up to you.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And how did you vote?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Item G is the same for Mr. Tyler Dean.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David,
I'll make the motion to appoint Tyler Dean to the City of Bel Air, Kansas Land Bank.
I'll second.
motion by Mr. David and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. So, if we have this executive session, it's going to take 20 minutes. So what's the feel of the council? Because we still need to do land bank, and we need about 15 minutes for land bank. So
If it's not urgent, I would skip it.
it's not urgent. Okay. It was a kind of yes or no type of thing. Of the items, it's probably more urgent than the other issues. Okay. Let's table that then, and that does not preclude that you couldn't call for an executive session as always. You always have that option if you think we need it for a particular reason, but this particular reason for this executive session, we'll table. So we'll go on to future issues. Our regular scheduled workshop is this month, is July 12th. I'm trying to catch up with what month it is, at 6:30. Want to make sure that works for everyone. Ted will present his first draft of the 2023 budget and be asking for input from the governing body. And that usually takes the whole workshop. Is that okay for everybody? Is everybody
Sounds like plenty to me.
Yep.
Sorry? Yeah, it's plenty. So, okay. Very good. We can move on to adjournment then.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
just a quick question. Are we sure that we're okay moving past item E on the TIF policy? As I looked at the land bank agenda, it looked like there may be some interest in having that and a resolution on that item before the land bank meeting. I just wanted to get clarity that the city manager feels like we could skip that.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. And the reason being is that what the land bank will be considering is basically a letter of intent to negotiate. And there is a contingency in there that the TIF district is approved, but that's 6 months. And so the concern that developer has is that the land's under contract. And so, but you won't consider any TIF district until he gets us his information, which could easily be 2 weeks to a month. So that's why the actual policy on the TIF, if you wanted to wait till the next council meeting, would be okay.
Then I move to adjourn.
Very good. Motion by Mr. Smith.
Second.
And second by Mr. David. Does anybody want to have a discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. We will convene the land bank meeting. We want to